Saul, great to see you, and thank you for joining us on the program. How infuriating is this for Israelis, finding out the error on the part of the Hamas group?
I very much doubt that it was an error at all. I think most Israelis would agree. This is just another trick that Hamas has been playing since the beginning, and their depravity is unparalleled. The fact that they have clearly taken parts of bodies of hostages who they killed and kept them back to be able to then hand them over later. Hamas's goal in all this, of course, is to try and drag out the process of returning the bodies, because that retards the process of reaching stage 2 of the deal. Stage 2 of the deal, which is very unlikely to come about, it always seemed implausible, was that Hamas would disarm and hand over its weapons. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they plan on reaching that stage, and they plan on keeping some bodies to drag out stage 1. In the meantime, as anyone can see, if you go on social media, you can see videos of them executing any rivals that they can find, what they call informers, but are really just, in fact, the local rivals or people that individual members of Hamas might have a grudge against. It's absolutely brutal what's happening in the Hamas-controlled part of Gaza.
The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was expected to discuss the issue with the heads of defense establishments, as we read earlier, regarding the remains of, especially Tafati's remains. Have they come to a decision yet? Do you know if the meeting is over?
They put out a statement about an hour ago where they said that they were going to renew their attacks on parts of Gaza in a certain limited way. And I wouldn't assume that much difference will be made to the reality on the ground, since Israel has absolutely very little interest in re-entering the parts of Gaza beyond what is called the Yellow Line, the 45% of Gaza that is retained by Hamas, including almost the entire population. Very little interest in going back into those areas to attack Hamas, because Hamas no longer are able to harm any living Israelis and retain the bodies of 13 Israelis. That really isn't enough motivation to agitate the Israeli public such that they will encourage their government to head back to war, to an active daily war against Hamas. But we can expect an increase in limited strikes around the area to secure that yellow line. And what we might be seeing is a hardening of that yellow line into what might turn out in the long run, when we look back in decades, to be a permanent border. That's entirely plausible. Certainly, the prospect of a yellow line becoming some kind of permanent border in part of Gaza that is beyond it, essentially becoming a demilitarized zone or an IDF-controlled zone, separating Israel from Hamas, in perpetuity, is more likely than Hamas personally disarming themselves. That doesn't seem likely. And if you can imagine that Israel is insufficiently motivated to disarm Hamas at this point, they can no longer attack Israeli civilians. Imagine how far the difference between the Israeli motivation and the motivation of other nations is. The King of Jordan just came out yesterday to point this out. But it was obvious from the beginning that this was always the problem with Trump's deal. That while it gave Israel pretty much everything that it wanted, it left Hamas in control of the population of Gaza. And they are genocidal, bloodthirsty thugs with no limits on their behavior. So why would they give up that control if that means their dissolution? Very implausible. And that's what we're seeing play out. So in terms of the deal, I am optimistic as to the fact that it will essentially continue as a stalemate. And the hot war that we saw over the past 2 years is unlikely to be returned to, soon at least. I am pessimistic in the actual realization of the 20-point plan. That doesn't seem to be realistic for the foreseeable future at all.
Well, Saul, thank you so much for joining us on the program. The peace still really does look very shaky at this time, worsened, of course, by Hamas's actions. Thanks again for joining us.